Right now, you're hearing music made from my new pack, Glitch Drums. Glitch Drums contains 232 drum samples, all synthesized on the Moog Slim Phatty analog synthesizer. They were recorded into Ableton Live and further processed with all sorts of effects and time stretched and really mangled to create some interesting drum sounds. There's 232 samples that you can use in any DAW, but if you're an Ableton Live user, you also get 21 drum racks that allow you to quickly and easily make the most of these sounds, and with the use of some handy macro knobs, further manipulate the sounds into even more interesting stuff so they can fit in just about any genre of music. This is Glitch Drums. You can check it out at my site, brianfunk.com. I hope you enjoy. Now on to the show. How's it going, everybody? And welcome to the Music Production Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Funk. I'm a musician, teacher, producer, Ableton certified trainer, and a podcaster. And today's podcast, I'm very excited for because I have Jonathan Bailey, who is the CTO, Chief Technology Officer at Izotope. And Izotope, just so you know, this is not a product endorsement thing or anything. It's a company whose plugins I really enjoy and I use a lot myself, and has helped make my life a little bit easier in the studio and allowed me to do a lot of interesting things with sound. So I'm very excited to talk to Jonathan. I heard him speak at MixCon in Brooklyn over the summer, and it was a great topic, great conversation, and I'm looking forward to digging a little deeper with him. So Jonathan, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much, Brian, for having us, and thanks for the kind words about the company and the products. And yeah, we don't even have to talk about Izotope. I'd be perfectly happy talking about all the synthesizers you have behind you. This collection.
Yeah, that's a fun part of this whole thing, right? All the toys you get to play with.
Indeed, yeah.
Nice
setup.
Thanks. But I do sincerely mean it. A lot of the products have been really helpful. I'm obviously Ozone is a huge part of my workflow. It's been I think since version 3, I've been using it, and also I really love the Nectar, the vocal effects I use in my live performance. Lots of cool stuff. There's a wide range too, which is really neat that you guys have. So
we're most of our products fit sort of more neatly in the space of either music production or audio production for post, but I don't know if you've had a chance to explore this, but every so often we'll find a sort of orthogonal use for a piece of technology that we've created. In fact, so my personal history of the company, I joined the company, I've been there for almost, it's coming up to 9 years, which is kind of trippy, actually. I've never worked for any company for even half that duration of time in my career. But when I joined under the pretext of taking some of the technology that we have in our audio repair and restoration product, which is called RX, and seeing if we could create like a creative tool out of it, basically a synthesizer out of it. And that became a product, Iris, which we still sell. But the team likes to find, we're very motivated by using technology kind of for technology's sake in music production. And what I mean by that is not just sort of referencing what's already been done in the world, like emulating hardware gear. We do some of that kind of work, but really sort of trying to be connected to what's the state of the art of technology and how can we use that to solve interesting musical problems or problems for, audio and other industries. And that's primarily film and television for us.
Right. Yeah. And they are very useful for whole kinds of things. And Iris is a super interesting example. It's the kind of synth where there's really no other equal that I know of anyway. It's sort of like this spectral sampling kind of thing. I'm not sure how you describe it actually, but you literally select like portions of the audio file, and it's the type of sampling that I really like because it's a mystery every time. You don't really know what you're going to get, and you get surprised. And those surprises for me often lead to ideas and the inspiration to make music.
Yeah. You can think about it. That's a good description of it. It's essentially a sampler with a really, really, really powerful and complex filter bank on top of it. That's kind of, but yeah, it's all of that happens in the spectral domain, and is kind of under the hood the same technology that we use in RX for totally different applications, not for sound design applications. Uh, a funny little bit of history. I think you can actually find this online if you do a little digging, but the idea for Iris came from another podcast.
Mm.
I think it came from the Sonic Scoop podcast, if I'm
Hmm.
remembering correctly. Um, Chris and Dave from G4 Software, who are friends of Izotope. This is what I remember. I could be missing some of the details here, so we can fact check this after we record this. But they were being interviewed, and they were talking about how they were using RX for sound design work, but they were having to painstakingly do the spectral kind of selection work that we were just describing, and then render each audio file one at a time. And so on
Hmm.
the podcast, they're like, "Oh, we wish Isotope would take this tech and build a synth out of it, basically." And we listened to it. And we're like, "Oh, that's a really cool idea. We should play around with that." So we had this idea to build a very short project out of that and release a very kind of quick to market product out of that concept, and it wound up taking us over a year to build it. It was one of the longest releases that we've done, sort of in the last 10 years of the company's history. But it's a cool tool. We had a lot of fun making it.
Yeah, it is. Is that something you guys do a lot, like getting the feedback from the users and learning new ways and coming up with new ideas for products? Is that something that's a big part of your process?
Yeah, absolutely. We So we've formalized this a lot more over the last, in particular, over the last 3 to 4 years. So I'll talk a little bit about the company and just kind of how we work and the structure of the company. We So we have a team of people that are our product management team, who are ultimately responsible for um, kind of defining um, the customers that we want to go after, the kind of broad set of problems or use cases that are relevant to them, and sort of directionally in our products, how we should attack those problems or go after those use cases. We have another team in the company that's our design team, and they sort of represent the bleeding edge for us in terms of doing a ton of in-person research with customers. Well, it's a live research with customers, I should say. So sometimes that's in person, and sometimes that's actually online. Like we do
Mhm.
Zoom or Skype sessions pretty frequently with people. But they've compiled hours and hours, hundreds, maybe thousands of hours of very, very detailed research sessions in which they kind of go. They talk to a group of people who represent a sampling of the different types of customers that we like to talk to, and just understand, like, how do you work, what do you do, what works for you, what doesn't. Literally have them share their screen and go through their experience. And so
Mm.
from that general kind of high level sense of what are the opportunities we see in the marketplace or we want to go after from a kind of customer expansion standpoint, all the way down to, like, I don't like how this knob works in this particular module in Ozone or Nectar, like we were talking about. We try and solicit as much feedback as we can from our customers and really kind of weave that into our product planning and overall kind of product development initiatives. And the last ingredient, of course, is we do a bunch of internal work around technology. We don't expect our customers to tell us how to solve the problems. We just want to know from their standpoint, what problems do you have? And then it becomes, this is sort of the art of product development. We try and bring some kind of creative inspiration and some knowledge of what's happening in technology. That's kind of our special sauce that we contribute to see if we can come up with something that's a good or meaningful solution for them.
Hmm. So in that way, you're actually watching people work with the products,
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
like sharing their screen, and then you get
yeah,
to see what they do.
yeah, yeah. And we record those sessions. Any of the developers on the team can review those. We actually have in-product analytics as well. So we've instrumented the products. The users have to opt in for this. So, and this is all anonymized information. So we don't, we can't um, report on individual user preferences or behaviors, but in aggregate, we collect user behaviors. And so that gives us some kind of directional indication as well of, like, that'll tell us something like, what's the most popular module in Ozone? Like,
Mhm.
what feature do people like to use the most? Or what audio workstations are they working in? Where in the world are they generally? These are, of course, geographic regions we can get. So what percentage of our user base is in, United States versus overseas, and what's the distribution amongst the international users. So yeah, we're a pretty we're a pretty data-driven company. Whether it's kind of qualitative feedback that we get from customers, like I like this, I don't like this, or looking at real usage data, we try
Mhm.
and use as much of that as possible in, in the development of our products.
Well, I
And I have a
bet.
little bit of a funny anecdote for why we do both of those. So the qualitative data is really, really helpful. It's really, there's some stuff that you can't just like collect a measure, right? Like a, piece of numerical data around, do you like a feature or not?
Mhm.
But um, sometimes, uh, but sometimes you got to get that for the following reason. So I won't say the product and I won't say who it was, but there was a moment where we had a brand new product. We released it to a small group of beta customers, and a very, very successful and well known and well respected music producer was on that beta. We sent him the product, and he responded back, "Oh my God, this is amazing! I love it so much. A, B, and C. This is also great." And we had already instrumented the analytics for that product, and we could see that he had never actually opened it before.
Oh,
So
wow.
this is someone that we had an artist relationship with,
Hmm.
and like he had an incentive to say nice things to us, but that's not really what we want to hear. We
Mhm.
want to hear genuine, honest feedback. And so there are certain places where we have to be mindful of where the like relationship dynamic kind of can get in the way
Mm.
of getting real meaningful feedback from people. So we try and counteract that as much as we can, but that can be a thing at times. And so that's where the like really instrumenting the products and just being able to observe how a person is working or really how they're using it in the wild can be very helpful to us. And that's really purely for the purpose of just making better stuff. That's what we're trying to do.
So you can't rely on what people say all the time,
All the time,
unfortunately.
unfortunately. Yeah, the future is perfect, but the past tells you what people actually do.
It's almost like the family member that says, "Oh yeah, your album was great. I love it." And
Yeah,
you
that's right. That's
never
right.
put it
That's
on.
right. And of course, like that comes from a place of generosity,
Hmm.
right? And kindness. I get it. But yeah, so we will literally try and do things in interviews to like cognitively prime the person to tell us that we're wrong
Hmm.
or so we'll say something that we'll ask a question for which I probably can't think of a good example on the fly, but we'll ask a question for which the answer is unambiguously like no or something to get them to feel okay saying no to us, right?
Right. Okay.
Or we'll make a statement that like nobody would ever say yes, I agree to that
Hmm.
with, to get them sort of in the mindset that like okay, like it's okay to tell us no, or you don't agree with something, or you don't like something. That's the whole point here. We wouldn't be doing the interview if we didn't actually want to know what you really think, not just to tell us everything we do is great. That's not helpful.
Well, that's really smart because it is very hard to get honest feedback, especially on a creation and something that like a person knows you have a lot invested in personally.
That's right. Yeah.
And so that's interesting that you would do that. Um, I have to imagine that you receive a ton of suggestions on things, but maybe how do you decide what is worth pursuing, what's not? Because I'm sure there's like a billion things, and if we did a billion things and followed every lead, we'd probably have something that's really cumbersome and difficult to use.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So there's a few different criteria that we use to make those kinds of decisions. So an easy one is it technically feasible or not,
Hmm.
right? Is this something we can do? I'll give you a concrete example of that, and this is something I hope we'll be able to do eventually, but we can't do right now. So the first version of Neutron, which is our sort of channel strip product, um, that was the first time we had really. That was the first product in which we had really released and also marketed what was at the time sort of our most bleeding edge machine learning technology. And that shows up in a feature called the track assistant, where you can stream some audio through it. You don't have to do any labeling yourself. We can make a determination of what the instrument that for the that's behind the audio on the track that you place the plugin on is likely to be, and then based on that and some acoustic features that we can derive from the audio signal, we can recommend some processing, basically like a preset, right? So cool. Okay, great. So that's really a big milestone for the company, and people were really excited about it, and that was awesome. That was a big hit for Izotope. But then almost immediately people said, oh, that's artificial intelligence. Well, does that learn my individual preferences, like how I
Mm.
like to work and how I like to use the product? And the answer to that question is no, it does not. We don't know how to do that yet. That's actually kind of a hard problem to solve in AI. So there's an example of a case where that's awesome feedback. In fact, we didn't even really talk about it before we released that product. It was hard enough to just get the basic feature working, but literally right away, user like, um, the sort of state of the art was at one level. We sort of moved it forward, but then the user expectation immediately exceeded what we were capable of doing. And so that's something, like I said, I hope that we will eventually be able to solve that problem. But as of right now, we haven't solved it in our products. So certainly kind of technical feasibility and whether we can do it is it obviously, I mean, that sort of makes or breaks whether we can pursue something. The from a product standpoint, the main thing that we really try and stay anchored to is kind of the vision for the product and where we're trying to go ultimately. So for each of our lines of products, we do have a kind of longer term roadmap and vision for what that needs to be. I'd say that's built as much out of user feedback as it is out of just ideas that we have internally or a specific product manager wants to pursue. Um, there are definitely common themes that'll emerge from the community, from the customer base, that are probably dictated by kind of trends in music production or trends in musical styles, or just what we've released, problems we've already solved, but relative to the problems we haven't, I guess is how I would put it. So you might be surprised if you were to look at kind of all the feedback that we get. It kind of starts to cluster pretty well, and that paints a pretty clear picture for us. So we can usually kind of derive from the feedback. It's not as kind of scattershot as you might think. We do get a large volume of it, but it tends to that a lot of the ideas tend to kind of cluster, and that gives us an indication. Okay, the market is really has an appetite for features A, B, and C based on the problems that the customers are saying. And then the last place, and this is important that we create space for it. Our team is kind of the third source as well. And by that I mean like the developers, the people who work in QA, the testers, everybody. Our team is very passionate about what we do and really truly deeply connected to our products and cares about them very much. Many of our employees are also users of the products, and so they definitely want to bring that passion to what they're doing. And a lot of the really great ideas that we have are definitely anchored in customer problems, but really come from the development team itself. And
Mm.
they're sort of working on the product day in and day out, and they contributed tremendous amounts ultimately to what we produce.
So you're also users, not just
Not
creators.
just That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yep. Yeah. That's not universally true, but that's overwhelmingly the case.
Well, I believe you have some musical background too yourself, right? A drummer,
Yeah.
percussionist.
Yeah. I am a drummer. Not quite a lifelong drummer, but I started when I was when I was around 12, 13 years old. And
Mm. That doesn't count as
I
lifelong.
well, I don't know. I meet better musicians than me all the time to start when they were like two or something. So
Right.
I still feel inadequate about that. No, but yeah. My mother was a music teacher, and my folks got me started in music pretty early. And there was the kind of bargain in the household was I could play any instrument I wanted and any style of music I wanted, but I had to take lessons.
Mhm.
So I eventually landed on the drums, and I grew up in California. I was like a hardcore loving skateboarding, you
Nice.
know, bonehead, and played loud music, too loud music, very poorly. But I studied jazz drumming, and when I went to college, I did my first degree in computer science. But I played in a jazz quartet at my undergraduate university, which is Stanford University. And then I graduated. Kind of my path to getting to Izotope was I graduated, and so I graduated from Stanford University in 1999, right in the like meaty part of the dot-com explosion. I went to
Mhm.
school with the Google people, the Yahoo folks, if you remember them.
Yeah.
They were the sort of most celebrated recent alumni of the university. all my classmates were going off and getting jobs at .com companies and making bajillions of dollars. And so I kind of went down that path too. I did that for a couple of years. I went and joined a startup company fresh out of school. It was acquired. I think I had only been there 9 months, and it was acquired by a big internet online advertising company called DoubleClick. But essentially, I worked in tech
Hmm.
for the better part of a decade. But about 2 years into that, I realized I really wanted to do something with music for my career, that I didn't just want to work in pure technology. I love technology, but I knew I wanted to use it to help people be creative. And so I kind of started this very long and extremely circuitous path towards working in music technology. When I was in the midst of changing jobs between one of these early .com companies I worked for, I applied to every music tech company that I could learn about. I applied to Cakewalk, I applied to Motu, I applied to Avid, which I think was still DigiDesign then, if I'm remembering right. Anybody that I possibly could, I applied to all those companies, and I either didn't hear anything back from any of them, or I couldn't make it past a phone interview because I did not know the first thing about desktop music production. I knew how to play the drums and I knew how to write software, but I didn't have any of the connective tissue to bring those two things together. And so I decided that my hack to try to see if I could actually be successful in moving that way in my career was I just focused on playing music. I started at this point in time I was living in Boston, and so I started studying privately with a percussion professor at Berklee College of Music, and he encouraged me on the basis of my playing to apply. He was basically like, you want to work in music, why don't you just come here for a couple of years, basically go back to Berklee. So I did. So I got a scholarship to go back to Berklee as a drummer, as a performer, but rather than focus on performance, when I was in school, I took the opportunity to learn about electronic music production. And so that helped me start to fill in the gaps. And then after I graduated from Berklee, I had both the connections, but I also then had the aptitude of kind of like, music synthesis. The program I did is now called electronic production and design at Berklee, but when I did it was called music synthesis. So it was really sound design and
Mm.
synthesizers and sequencing and stuff like that, as a little bit of recording and kind of digital audio stuff as well. But now I had found like I knew what MIDI was, whereas 7 years prior when I was trying to break into the industry, I didn't know what MIDI was. I didn't know, I
Yeah.
didn't know anything. I didn't know what a neon compressor did, and so that enabled me to kind of start getting work in the space.
Oh,
But yeah, that's
that's
kind of
cool.
that's my quick overview.
Berkeley is doing such cool stuff, especially now with the electronic digital instrument program they have
Yeah,
going. I teach an
yeah,
Ableton Live sampling course there online,
yeah, yeah,
and the course is incredible. For me too, just like the material we go through, and then to hear the students' assignments, it's really nice to see like a proper college embracing the technology.
yeah.
I mean, I work as a high school English teacher in public school,
Oh, really? Okay.
and it's really, really hard to get technology working and
Yeah,
or even just available.
right,
And it's the way the everything's moving with the students too, like they're so far ahead, and then you put them in rows and hand them textbooks, and they're like, and you tell them you're not allowed to use your phone, the most powerful
right,
learning device ever
right,
created.
right.
And it's just nice to see that this is starting to get embraced. And I think Berkeley's really cool like that. I'm really happy to just be involved with that. So I'm sure for you, um, at that time, it was probably such a valuable experience to get all of that out of the way so you can actually put the technology use into what you want to do.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was an amazing experience for me going to school there. For the students as much as for the professors. In fact, I made my way to Izotope via a classmate who
Mm,
had done an internship. I think he started as like in customer service
hmm,
at Izotope, maybe as an intern, and then he rose to be a product manager. And is a guy named Jack Cote. He now works for Fender. He's a senior product manager there, but he started out doing customer care, basically answering help desk tickets from our users, and then moved into product management, did a little bit of marketing, ran our sound design team, and then unfortunately decided, he was from California, he was ready to move home, so he went back there, worked for Universal Audio for a while, and is now at Fender Digital. So we have a big crew of Berkeley people at Izotope, but there was just this amazing community of people there as well. When we were there, the online course stuff was pretty early days still, so it existed, but if you wanted to take those classes, it was kind of a separate program. It didn't have any bearing on your degree program at the university.
Right.
I'm not sure if that's still the same case, but I think they changed that, right? Like you can do an online class and get credit for it as part of a degree program there. Is that how
There
it
are
works?
degree
You know?
programs, yeah, that
Yeah.
there's, and
Okay.
there's all kinds of interesting ones too. Like,
Yeah. So I mean, they've really developed it a ton since I was there. I wish I would have had an opportunity to use that resource when I was there. It seems
mm.
like it's really really cool. Oh, and one thing I forgot to mention to you. So, do you have like a database of your customers, of people who've bought sample packs from you and stuff like that?
I have basically emails,
Okay.
and
I
just
I
whatever information. Yeah.
I'm a customer of yours as well. I
Oh yeah.
bought a
No
sample
way.
pack from you.
Oh, that's
If you
cool.
go search for my name, maybe like, how long have you been doing that for?
I
It could have been 10 years ago. I bought it.
It's getting on about like 8 or 9 years, I guess.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So it might have been early days. I don't even remember what it was, but
Uh
when
huh.
you reached out to me about doing this interview, I was like, I recognize this name. I recognized your name, and then I realized, yeah, I had purchased some sort of Ableton sample pack from you.
Oh, that's super cool.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
never really know where the stuff winds up
yeah.
myself.
There you go. There you go.
Well, we're like
So
mutual fans of
we
each
are
other's
mutual
work.
customers. That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. So we have to be very nice to each other. We can only say non-critical things to each other.
Actually, let me tell you a thing. No, that's super cool. It's amazing how connected the community is, and even
Yeah.
like your story about getting involved with Isotope, and now your friend is at Fender and UA. It seems like everyone kind of gets around a little bit, and it's a great lesson
Yeah.
in life about. I always teach this to my students, like, and it never hurts to be nice to people, because you never know where they're going to wind up or who you're
Yeah.
going to talk to and run into.
It's true. Yeah.
But it's a great community. I think Isotope's really been nice lately too, with a lot of like, not just like it's not just products, it's also some helpful stuff as far as tutorials go that aren't so centric to the plugin. Like, sure, you can use that specific device or whatever, but it's also helpful just to a general music production person.
Yeah, that's kind of our marketing superpower,
Mm.
is education. And that actually comes from very, very early in the company's history. Um, so the first product that Isotope created, and this is well before my time, this is 10 years before I joined the company, was vinyl, which we still is a
Hmm.
free product that we still give away. Go get it. And then the second one was the first version of Ozone. Um, at that time, there was no other mastering plugin on the market. And so, in addition to releasing the product, we kind of needed to teach people what mastering was. And so, the first version of the mastering guide came from that. If you cut to today, we actually have on staff, as a full time employee and colleague of ours, a guy named Jonathan Weiner, who is uh, a very well respected and esteemed mastering engineer, uh, a full time professor at Berklee College of Music in the music production and engineering program, and the director of education at Izotope. He's got an amazing podcast himself, which, if you haven't seen it, you should check that out. So that's recorded literally in our office in Cambridge, and our headquarters and our studio space there. So
Hmm.
yeah, we want to, music production is hard, and we don't want to sell people tools that they don't know how to use. We want to help people really maximize their experience with products that we're making, and maximize their potential to get that sound that they hear in their head actually realized
Mm.
in their project. And where we can just deploy technology to make that happen, we do it. But I mean, how complex this, turn around and look at the array of synthesizers behind you. There's a lot of knobs and sliders and buttons and keys and
Hmm.
things to understand back there. It can be pretty overwhelming for someone. So that's kind of really actually a core value of the company, is we really value education as a company, and that's kind of become over time kind of our flavor of marketing, kind of how we like to communicate with the world and with our customer base. There are other companies that I would say candidly, they have like a cooler artist relations program, or maybe their brand is they emulate physical hardware gear better than anyone else. Ours is kind of making very powerful cutting edge technology and educating our customer base.
Mm. Well, I think it's nice to have like maybe it's technically marketing material, but it's nice to like enjoy it just from the perspective of a learner
Yeah,
and just get
yeah.
information. And I can
Well, it's
tell
not
you,
bad to Izotope. It's not bad for Izotope if more and more and more people are interested in and knowledgeable about music production, right?
right,
Or
right.
audio production as well. That's
It
good for us. So
could eventually come back to you anyway.
yes, well, that's the theory, and yeah.
Well, I have somewhere anyway a printed out copy of that mastering reference guide from
How
about
do you
2007 or 8.
right?
On printed it out before you had like an iPad to read it on, and it was
Right.
extremely helpful for me. I mean, I learned a
That's
lot of concepts that it helped me understand limiting versus compression, say, and
yeah,
just a lot of things that yeah, like you back in those days, you download something and then what good was it to you if you don't know how to use it?
right.
Um,
Exactly. Yeah,
and that was a big help for me. So
yeah,
right then and there, I was like, oh, this is cool, that they're
yeah, yeah,
teaching as well.
yeah,
That
yeah,
came that came,
yeah.
I
We've
think,
got
with the stuff. Ozone.
we've gotten a lot of positive feedback on that, and I mean, I honestly, that's not the part of the business that I run, so I have very little to do with it. I won't take any personal credit for any of that. I I think it creates a degree of trust with our customers when we, the approach that we've taken, where we release a mastering guide, but it tries to be, it's hard to be concrete and specific, but totally product agnostic as well. But I think we definitely aspire to sort of thread that needle as much as we can. And try and err towards more like just kind of presenting the concepts, and not just kind of teaching someone how to use one tool.
Mhm. So one of the things that I don't really know of happening in too many other plugins is this sort of intercommunication between, like with Neutron.
Yep.
Neutron, like connecting to like
Yep.
do things like identify masking frequencies,
Yep.
which has been for me actually a really helpful teaching tool in my Berkeley class, because I can show people like when we go over some mixing stuff, like look at how this is a competing element with your, say, your bass, that this is why
Yeah.
things are hard to hear. It's really I think that's been a great tool for people to see how their tracks are interacting with each other. I guess what I'm kind of curious is like, do you guys have some ideas, or like how far can this go? Because I really haven't seen that anywhere else that I'm aware of anyway, this sort of like communication between devices on separate tracks.
Yeah. Well, sky's the limit, I guess. We're as most of our products, the products that we're most well known for, I think, especially for listeners of your podcast, are plugins, right? And so, for people who don't really know sort of how a plugin works or what's happening under the hood, essentially what we get is a stream of audio and some parameter data. We get a little bit of data from the host, like the sample rate and bit depth and things like that, sort of basic fundamental characteristics of the audio. We might get some other data, like what's the, I don't know, the meter of the project or something, is it 4/4 or 3/3, but we get very, very high level data, and that's kind of it. And of course, this can vary a little bit by plugin format. So if you work in one host, that host, Ableton might give us different information than Pro Tools does. And within that, each one of those plugins is siloed, right? They're each on an individual track.
Hmm.
But that's not how music really works, right? That's not how people create music. You're thinking kind of more holistically. When you arrange something, you're thinking about how the instruments are going to interact. When you are playing with other musicians, you are interacting. And so it was kind of obvious in a way that, that if we were able to have the plugins kind of talk to each other and share contextual information with each other, that we might be able to do things that wouldn't be solvable otherwise, like the masking meter example that you gave. Kind of state of the art for us right now is, so Neutron can talk to other instances of Neutron, but it can also talk to Nectar. And so we can actually remove masking if you're using Nectar, to enhance the voice in your recording. So we've gone from just displaying the presence of masking to now being able to eliminate masking. Okay, so that's kind of cool. So now we can do that. I think we can push that in a bunch of different ways. We talked a little while ago about the track assistant in Neutron. Well, in the most recent release of Neutron from earlier this year, now we have a new feature called the Mix Assistant, where we can, if you put Neutron on every channel, we can actually sort of create logical groupings of those channels in our visual mixer and then create kind of a rough mix for you. So we're kind of pushing towards, kind of an assistive mixing paradigm there as well. And so, those are, maybe indications of kind of how we're thinking philosophically. And this kind of is reflected in our mission and purpose as a company. I've kind of said versions of this a couple times. What we're most motivated by and kind of our reason for existing is to help people with creative intent be creative. And we think that a good way to do that is to allow you as the creator to focus on your creative decision making and not have to make technical decisions. Mm-hmm. So a technical decision might be, okay, there's the presence of masking in my mix, and I don't want that, right? But being able to then, eliminate all of that and then allow you to focus on, well, should the bass be louder? Or should the, guitar be louder in this section? Well, that's an aesthetic decision, right? We can't make that for you. That depends on your artistic intent. But we want to see if we can use technology to kind of push you closer to just being in that creative space, as much as you want to be. So that's kind of the goal. But we see a lot of opportunity. If we can kind of break out of the confines of the DAW, and we can get more information about what you're doing, what instruments you're working with, what content you're working with, and then kind of what your creative intent is. We think we can, continue to kind of push on some of the workflows and provide some solutions for people that are, that get, again, I said it before, they get them that much closer, that much more quickly to that sound that they're hearing in their head.
Well, I like that a lot myself. My favorite part about making music is the actual making of the music. And then when we get into things like mixing, I enjoy mixing to a point, but there's definitely this pulling your hair out of your head part of mixing when you're trying to, you get really technical and you're comparing your mix here and there. And you think you have it, you name it Final Mix 5, and then you realize it's not the final mix again, and you're going back and forth, or a week later. That's the stuff sometimes that gets tedious, and I think has made me shy away from finishing tracks in certain cases.
Yeah, definitely. That's kind of another motivation for this. So we call this this technology IPC internally, or interplugin communication. One thing we've noticed with customers that we talk to, some people still work in traditional ways, but for a lot of our customers, they don't work in the traditional model of record, edit, mix, master, right? Those kind of like vertical siloed production stages.
Yeah.
That whole kind of workflow is more like organic and continuous and iterative. And so that's a place where, if you think about it, like if our editing products can talk to our mixing products, can talk to our mastering products and feed information between them, we can support, a customer that wants to work kind of more organically and iteratively and non-linearly, and not work in that sort of mode that, that kind of traditional mode of, well, I'm just going to go from record, through all of the relevant stages to master. And so that's something that we're a place where we're seeing opportunity for IPC as well. And so the products are talking across product lines as well. And as I said, it's early days, and there's some kind of interesting technical challenges that we have to get through. Like one thing, for example, is we don't know if there's a plugin that's in front of one of our plugins, like as an insert on a channel, that is imparting a large amount of delay. So, we have to jump through some hoops associated
Mm.
with that. But we have some kind of tricks up our sleeve in order to be able to account for some of that stuff. But a lot of this is, again, the more kind of context we can get for what the user is trying to do, we think the more we can do.
So you can't really tell if, say, I'm ruining a track with the plugin that I put in before my Neutron device, like, because I imagine maybe.
Right, right,
Um,
right. Yeah, yeah,
um,
exactly. Yeah.
so yeah, I could see that. That would be helpful to know if maybe the problem is something you did, not the actual source.
Right, right. So for example, if you have, even if we had access to the underlying audio file, if you had a plugin in
Hmm.
front of us to introduce a lot of distortion, we're going to still get a stream of audio through us, most likely. So we may not know that, right? And so we may make recommendations or suggestions that would be incorrect because we don't have the right context. So, so those are some of the kind of technical challenges, but over time we'll get around those.
Hmm. So, like I said, I am a fan of that because I do like getting kind of the starting place and somewhere to work from, and maybe a little help on the things that get a little tedious.
Yeah.
Um, but I guess the question I have for you is if the machine is learning, like about what to do, how to make things sound a certain way. I imagine it's also learning like what the trends are, what's the hot new thing people are doing. Is there a danger that stuff can sort of start sounding the same?
Yes. Yeah. What's funny is, I genuinely, sincerely, I think there is. Not all of this technology that we're talking about, but some of it is powered by um, some artificial intelligence, machine learning algorithms that we've developed as a company. And what machine learning algorithms tend to do is find um, kind of, within a distribution of scenarios, they tend to kind of find the kind of clusters and the center points around that. They
Mm,
don't tend to find the outliers. Well, in art, the outliers could be like where genres are created,
right.
right? Or, innovation happens from a creative standpoint. So, you know, it- um, maybe another way of thinking about it is that these algorithms, they sort of follow musical trends. I don't think they're leading musical trends.
Hmm.
We have, so in Ozone we have a feature called Master Assistant, which helps set some kind of target frequency processing and dynamic settings based on our determination of what genre of music you're likely working at. We found that there's a pretty good correlation between genre and mastering um, processing.
Yeah, makes sense.
But so in order to do that, we have to train that algorithm against a bunch of music that's labeled according to a genre. A new genre comes along tomorrow that our algorithm doesn't know about it, right? So
Yeah.
if it sounds really different from what's already happened, and the processing that you might use for that genre of music is different, we're not going to know what to do with that, and we'll probably do the wrong thing. So yeah, so these the state of the art of machine learning kind of tends to kind of steer towards more like the average case or the standard case or the best practice case or the mean case, not the sort of totally inventive scenario. So I think the way we've tried to um, account for that, I guess, is to there's a reason we call these things assistants and not
Mm.
like this is like your final polished mix. It's to give you a starting point where you still have agency as a creative person in the whole process, and not to sort of just take you out of the process and take away your ability to make decisions and do whatever it is you want to do.
Yeah, so you have to kind of be the human in charge still and
Yeah,
kind of
that's right.
think about it.
That's right.
I was a little like I don't know, maybe surprised, like, because, and this is a bad place, maybe. I'm sure you don't focus your research on customer data in like comment sections of various like places on the internet because it can be um, kind of the worst of the worst pops up. But I was a little
Depending on
surprised.
where you go.
Yeah, right. I was a little surprised that a lot of the like resistance that I saw towards like the assistant, because to me, I kind of see this a lot like a preset. Really, it's just a little more customized. It's kind of like telling you what direction to go in rather than just here's a list of presets. Um, so I could see how this is important for you to still like pay attention, because the machine, I think we get this idea like machine learning, like they're going to become smart and they're going to take over our song. But I think
Yeah.
that's very science fiction movie inspired
Yeah.
thinking, whereas it's
Yeah.
really reacting on what's already happened, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. That's a good way to think of it. I mean, so maybe kind of two reactions to your comment. The first one is the forums and how critical the forums can be. And yeah, there can, it can be, I'll put it this way: when we have new developers join the team, I always caution them against like either getting too hooked to by the love or the hate in the forums, because
Mm-hmm.
it can come both ways. It's like
Mm-hmm.
if you ride the high, you're gonna ride the low eventually, because it's coming sooner or later. That's a community of users that are super super passionate, and they're a vocal, passionate community. They tend to really like the experience of really kind of nerding out and getting deep into the products. They know the products extremely well, inside and out. They're not necessarily representative of the average user,
Mm-hmm.
but they're powerful users, and we do pay attention to them. And we're pretty good at like looking past some of the snark and stuff. And again, kind of harkening back to our earlier conversation, if you look at that kind of feedback with the right mindset, there's great feedback from that community of people. But they don't, not everybody wants to use a product that way, right? Like not
Yeah.
every, we have people who are customers, who are musicians, who are amazing players, but they don't want to buy Pro Tools. They don't really want to buy Ozone, but they want to make a recording and make it sound great. They may not have the access or the means to hire a professional to do it, but they have that creative intent. They want to do that, and that's really where the whole, we're sort of talking about the more kind of pro line of our products. But we have a very new line of kind of products, or a hardware product with a sort of software ecosystem around it called Spire. And that's where that comes from. It's really the same underlying powerful signal processing and machine learning technology under the hood, but it's for a totally different kind of customer, more
Yeah.
like a pure musician type of customer. And there's a whole kind of spectrum in between there, with people with different levels of experience and education around these products. But the one thing they have in common is they all want to be creative. They just have very different opinions on how they want to
Mm-hmm.
get there. And so we do our best you know, to kind of satisfy all of them. But it's a pretty diverse community at the end of the day in terms of experience and education, and that, kind of calling back to your earlier question, how do we decide what gets in and what doesn't get in? A lot of it has to be guided by our understanding of those customers, and we try and kind of cluster them together into kind of groups or cohorts that have similar behaviors and needs.
That's a good point, because there could be a suggestion coming from a person that is really not the user for this
That's
product.
not
Yeah.
representative of, yeah, exactly what we're trying to do. So we have to sort of, I had I sort of hate this analogy, but I think it's a useful one. And a former colleague of mine said, when you're kind of building a great product, you have to be a little like a sniper, which is you have to like stay laser focused on what your target is, and still simultaneously like take in information from your peripheral
Yeah.
vision constantly, so
Hmm.
that you know what's going on. Like you're focused and you have a clear objective, but you're always situationally aware. So if you can ever think of a similar analogy that does not have anything to do with shooting people, please let me know, because I would
Okay. Yeah.
prefer something less violent. But I like kind of cognitively, if you can kind of put yourself in that frame of
Sure.
mind, that is kind of the exercise.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Because if you're a heavy DAW user, you're mixing and mastering your own stuff, you're
Of
probably
course,
not going to have
of
the
course.
best feedback on Spire, which is for.
Well, it's a funny thing that happens actually, and this is, another maybe a little insight to share, sort of like from behind the curtain at Izotope. So we almost always have a crisis of confidence when we do something like build a track assistant, one of the assisted features that the high end of the market, and that this will scale upwards. Like the highest end of the market will totally reject it. We don't really design those features for them. We design them typically for the sort of more novice user, someone who's new to the product line anyway.
Hmm.
So we think like, okay, like I don't know, like name, producers that are making hit records won't care about those features, won't like those features, will sort of turn their nose up at those features. That is almost exclusively uh, not true. They love those
Hmm.
features. Why? Because they're under crazy time pressure. They
Sure.
are working very fast. They got to go, go, go. They have an artist who's like in a mindset. They finally getting a good take out of them. They don't want to noodle over compressor settings all day long. They want to get something quick, and they can fix it later. But they when we launched Neutron, we hosted an industry party around NAMM time at a big record label's offices. We had an open bar there, and we invited a bunch of kind of like marquee artists to it. Nobody was getting free drinks at the bar. Everyone was gathered around the demo station, nerding out over the product and like running different sessions through it
Hmm.
and giving us real time feedback. Like, oh my god, I can't believe this. Yeah, I would choose that preset. I would use that setting on this guitar or vocal. It was totally, totally amazing. And so we're surprised by this again and again and again, that actually sometimes the needs of the more novice user and the absolute like most consummate pro are actually pretty similar.
Hmm.
But the person in the middle who's like the maybe more, highly skilled amateur, like semi-professional, is maybe more, they derive more pleasure around the process as well, and the tools and the tech
Hmm.
for kind of the sake of the tech, and want to spend time, like really want to get in there and kind of do everything manually themselves and really enjoy almost like the craft of using the products. So it's really interesting. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily what you would think, but that's been our experience.
No, that makes a lot of sense actually, because you're right. Like sometimes you need to get work done, and
Yeah,
something that'll
right.
help steer you in the right direction and maybe cut out some of those just setup processes. The common routine things. That's why people have templates, right? I mean,
Right.
that's why
Yeah,
people
that kind of
save
thing. Exactly.
presets.
That's right. That's right.
So, do you think that machine learning, AI, intelligent plugins, and all this stuff is this potentially endangering careers, job paths, or parts of the process? Maybe. I mean, like if we look at like certain things, like technology has changed a lot with just
Yeah.
studios. I
Yeah.
mean, people have studios in their phone now, so
Yeah.
you don't see them around as much. And
That's
then
right.
really, the cream of the crop is what kind of sticks around. Just curious to your
Yeah.
thoughts. I know that's a question you probably get a lot.
Yeah, yeah, I get that one pretty frequently especially when I speak publicly, and I think people are sometimes surprised by my answer. Honestly, genuinely, I do think it's a bit of a threat for people. I think, but I think it's only a threat to people that are unwilling to adapt.
Mhm.
Um, I am. I do not believe that the machine, algorithms, the cloud, whatever, the robots are going to replace human beings, because, this goes back to we can get metaphysical really quickly here, but the concept of like creative agency. There are, art is defined in reaction to so many things, right?
Mhm.
To politics, to religion, to art that came before it, to aspects of humanity that as we talked about earlier, okay, so we're making some powerful machine learning technology, but we haven't figured out a way to make it customizable based on your individual preferences.
Mhm.
So we have a long way to go, I think, before, a computer can make art that is durable and relevant for like time. I don't believe that's coming. I don't see any indication that that's coming anytime soon. But the more, if your job is that you perform a mechanical task right now, and you're like, that's your unique value, is that you know how to wire up a patch bay, or you know how to denoise an audio file, and you don't provide any value beyond solving that technical problem, technology will likely displace you.
Mhm.
And so I think it's going to challenge all of us to kind of tap into um, that kind of higher, that sort of more creative, more inspired, maybe more human side of ourselves as
Mhm.
artists, in order to, to to contribute value ultimately, which is kind of what we're talking about here, right? How do you kind of create value for people? But and that can come in so many places. Just even the pure fact of like collaborating with someone is value. Just being a sounding board for someone. That doesn't necessarily even need to come down to your expertise or your knowledge, but maybe just your ability to communicate with somebody and to interact with somebody. There's value in that, right? There's value in, yeah, if you happen to, write great music or whatever. I'm not too concerned about people who are working in audio and audio production who can kind of bring some creativity to their work. I think their work will be actually improved and enhanced and even more enabled by technology.
Yeah, that's kind of how I'm feeling too myself. I've had a few discussions recently with people that are involved in AI, and it's helped me
Yeah.
understand a little more that it's not like a a machine that really has, it's not Terminator.
Right.
It's
Right.
more of a reaction to what has happened already.
Yeah.
And I think it really does make it important to kind of understand where the humanity is in what we do,
Yeah.
and focus on that and bring it out. And I think really that's gonna ultimately end up in more artistic expression. Because I think about something like auto tune, for instance. You might
Yeah.
say, well, that might cost, maybe like singers say, like, hired professional singers.
Yeah.
But I think it also just gives so many people the ability to express themselves vocally. And it's
Yeah.
really only made and then we could get into like misusing things like auto tune on,
Sure. Sure.
and that's a whole other thing. But it's
Sure.
just opened up another creative avenue. I think much more so than maybe shut anything else down, or it's even highlighted the importance of getting that professional singer in there to really emote their feelings and capture what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. I've used this example previously, so apologies to anyone who's heard me on a podcast before, because I've probably said this before. But my wife works in the art world, and I can find it useful to look at like other industries or other worlds for how this stuff plays out. So, if you look at painting, up until the early 1900s, painting was its primary purpose was portraiture, right? You wanted essentially a photo of someone, you had to commission a painting of them. Well, when the camera came around, that was supposed to be the death of painting.
Mhm.
If you go to the MoMA, they're reopening at MoMA. If you happen to be in New York City, which is a plug for my wife's museum she works in,
Oh, nice.
I can guarantee you there are plenty of paintings there that are extremely valuable. So painting definitely did not die, but
Right.
instead it was freed up to do other things. It
Hmm.
was, the abstraction and impressionism were invented. Conceptual art was invented. So painting didn't need to be photography. It could become its own thing. And, I personally take a lot of inspiration from that. I mean, we kind of talked about this in like the most, kind of minute example earlier where we created a product that was specifically designed and purpose built to remove noise from audio. And
Hmm.
what did somebody do with that? They turned it into a synthesizer. We never in a billion years did we see that one coming, and yet like that's that kind of creative inspiration that we talk about. And so I never cease to be amazed by and inspired by when we level up and put the next piece of our best efforts at creating some new technology out in the world, how people will use that and the places they will take it. I see no signs that kind of human creativity is slowing down anytime soon
Hmm.
as
Yeah.
technology becomes more powerful.
Yeah, it seems like it's just offering us new ways. It's cutting out some of the mundane stuff so we can get more creative with some, frees up our kind of
That's right.
headspace to move on.
That's right. Yeah,
Hmm.
to be in the creative space. I mean, and the flip side of that, think of this like, okay, when was the last time you sat down to record something and your operating system overnight had installed some updates and now your DAW of choice doesn't work and you have to go download some drivers and like 40 minutes later you've rebooted 3 times, you've had to go find a new installer for a new operating system update, and you forgot why you sat down to record to begin with. Like that inspiration is gone, never to return. That's the world we live in too.
It
And
is.
so I
It
think
is.
we have a ways to go to accomplish what you just said, which is to allow people to sort of enter a creative flow space and just stay there and work. What
It
do they think?
is. The more elegant it gets and complicated it gets, the more points of
Right.
failure.
That's right. That's right. Exactly.
You were talking
Exactly right.
about the synths back here.
Yep.
I can't tell you how much time I've spent on my back on the floor with wires,
Yeah. Right.
scratching my
Yeah.
head, trying to figure. As much as it's a lot of fun when it's working, it seems
Sure.
like someone
Yeah.
sneaks down here in the middle of the night and changes stuff up on me.
Right. That's funny. That's funny.
So, what are you excited about in the future? Do you have anything that I know it's obviously you can't give me your secrets or anything, but
Sure.
any
Yeah, I
aspects of
can,
this?
I can talk about some stuff that's maybe new that is if we've been really busy. So a lot of your users would probably know that we've released an update to Ozone about a month ago. We're
Mhm.
really proud of that. There's some really cool new functionality in that release. There's a one of the features is based on some of our most cutting edge machine learning technology. It's called master rebalance and allows you to
Yeah,
actually split the signal and then to sort of modify between vocals, bass drums, and other, the relative levels of the various components of that signal. So that's pretty cool. That's not the first time we've released that foundational technology to the world. That also exists in RX in a more offline expression. This is a streaming expression. The offline expression is called music rebalance. So that's really exciting. We literally just launched a new product yesterday. This is not a music production product, but I'm going to talk about it anyway, just because it's cool. Um, so we had this idea for many, 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 many years that we called Reverb Batch. And the idea was a little bit of a holy grail problem for audio for post, but I think there's applications for music too. Um, so a common problem in say like TV production is this is really true for reality TV. Sorry, but somebody like there's not a good take of some dialogue or something in a space, and so then they have to replace that dialogue later through a process called ADR. But usually they're in a vocal booth later. Have you ever had the experience of you're watching a show or movie and the speaking sounds like it's in the environment you're looking at, and all of a sudden it sounds like the speaker is right in your
yep.
ears, right? Because they're close mic'd in a vocal booth and they've kind of re-recorded the dialogue for it. So what if you could like almost like click and copy the room ambience or reverb in that space and
Mm.
apply it to the new dialogue that you've created? Well, we just came out with a product that does that. It uses machine learning to essentially infer what the parameters would be of a reverberant signal that you put through the product. Does that make sense? So essentially you put an audio signal through the product that has a reverb profile associated with it, and then we can derive just from the output what are the dials on the knobs that would have been used to create that sound, which is
Mm.
pretty mind blowing. So so we just released that yesterday. It's called Dialogue Max. You can download a free trial of it. It's Pro Tools only for some workflow reasons because that's the market. It primarily works in Pro Tools at the professional level. It's a little bit of more expensive product relative to some of our other products at $499. But there's some really, really, really cool tech in there. And then the other thing I'll mention is, I talked about Spire. That's our kind of attempt at making inroads with a more pure musician. So there's an app that's free that you can download either on Android or iOS. And then we have a hardware, it's kind of like a mobile interface that's wireless. So
Mm.
it has a microphone on it, you can record directly onto it, or there are a couple of instrument inserts, kind of combi jack. So you can plug either a microphone or an instrument cable, XLR or quarter inch cable into it. We've been in the kind of quietly in the background. We built a cloud team that's been building some cloud infrastructure over the past year, and so we've just released the first set of features associated with that. It's a really simple feature. You can share sessions with your friends. So if you record a session on Spire, you can send it to your friend, but that now is going to go through some um, cloud infrastructure that could allow it to be denoised when I
Mm.
send it from me to you, or mix assisted, or vocal assisted, or you can kind of see where this can go. But we're starting to play around with essentially, audio analysis and processing in the cloud, which
Mm.
is the way the world is going.
Yeah, right.
And that gives us an opportunity, by getting off of your mobile phone, getting off of your desktop computer, you can kind of think of the cloud as almost like free and infinite from a computation standpoint, from a memory standpoint. you definitely incur a little bit of latency when you're uploading an audio project to the cloud and you download it. But once it's up there, we can throw tons of compute power at it. We can learn a lot about the data that's flowing through it. So that's really, really exciting for us. That's kind of bleeding edge technology platform that we're supporting, but we're really excited to see where that can go as well.
Hmm. Yeah, that's fun. And I mean, I think the phone is such a great recorder because it's the one you always have on you.
That's right. That's
So
right.
to clean those up a little bit would be nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw dialogue match, and my initial thought was, what would happen if I sort of tricked the system a little bit? Like
Yeah.
put in like my drums and then tried to get it to like match my guitar, or just
I,
what kind
I
of
haven't
happy accidents could we find?
yeah, I would love for you to play around with it and tell me what you think.
Yeah.
I haven't heard the sessions, but from so Izotope, we have an office in Japan now, and so from some of our colleagues and some of our customers in Japan, we were out there, I don't know, a couple months ago demoing the product, and we heard some feedback that people put it on some musical sessions and actually
Hmm.
really loved it for that. We didn't design it with that in mind, but if there's a theme for this conversation, it's that people use stuff in ways we don't design it for all the time, and so yeah, I'm hopeful that we can kind of build on what we've done so far and broaden. And you can imagine you can imagine a whole bunch of different applications of that. I mean, for
Hmm.
me personally, there was a talk I saw a few years back about what was at that point in time some of the most advanced image processing and analysis technology, and it's a the kind of concept or the topic is called style transfer, and the talk centered around some kind of breakthrough image processing work that where essentially what they had done is you could take a photograph of anything, right, and then they had trained a machine learning network that could construct that image as though it had been painted by Matisse or Picasso or Van Gogh or Edward Munch or whoever, right?
Wow.
And so the idea was, so you have this content, right? You have a house and a tree and and there are these places in the image plane and whatever, but there's a notion of style that transcends all of that, right? And so, think about, so for me, this is a little bit of a holy grail problem in music production. As a musician and as a producer myself, I always took a lot of inspiration from just like my favorite bands, my favorite producers. And I love the concept that, maybe at some point in the future, someone could sit down and say, okay, I've just played some music. This is my composition. Make this sound like my favorite band. Make it sound like Radiohead, or make
Right.
it sound like, Grimes or whoever you love, make it sound like that. When if we are able to pull that off at some point in the future, then I'll probably go do something else. I don't know, go work on Wall Street or something. I think I'll be out of good ideas at that point in time. But
That's like
we're getting
everything.
closer and closer and closer to that dream, right? Where we
Hmm.
can, the technology is so powerful that we can get all of this information that we thought was impossible to get from just audio signals now.
Hmm.
So I'm excited to see where we can take that. And dialogue match for us is sort of the next step in that direction.
That's cool. That's an interesting idea. And maybe a fun place to leave us for this. I know we're on time constraints, so I want to let you get out of here, but I do appreciate you taking the time to talk about this stuff. It's fascinating, and it's the world of music technology is so exciting, and a lot of that is because of the stuff Isotope's doing. It seems like every couple months there's something new and exciting coming out of your work. So thank you for that, and it's very inspiring as a musician myself.
Well, thank you so much. I'm really happy to hear that, and of course, appreciate the feedback and the opportunity to chat about this. We're really, as I mentioned before, we're just as excited about this stuff too.
Hmm.
And where my team, the entire company, and I put myself in this bucket as well, is just really, really, really motivated, kind of intrinsically. What gets us out of bed every day is hearing that people use our products and love our products and feel inspired by our products. And we say that our purpose as a company is to inspire and enable people to be creative. That's why everybody shows up to work every day at
Hmm.
Isotope. So, if we're succeeding with that, we're stoked. So thank you so much for the opportunity to chat with you and for the invitation and for the sample pack that I bought from you however long ago it was in
Well, thank you.
2012. And
Yeah.
yeah, hope to get a chance to meet in person sometime. And
Hmm.
if we can ever be helpful for you, please let us know.
Cool. Yeah, I think that inspiration comes through in the products. So I definitely feel it talking to you. So thanks a lot. We'll say goodbye to
Right on.
everyone and then wrap this up.
All right.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Take care.